Hey everyone, welcome back to the show. I'm really excited because if you're watching this on YouTube for the first time ever, you'll notice I actually have a person with me at my home studio, and it's our producer, Sabrina. We are back for a fun subscriber-led Q&A. So we popped into our subscriber-only group chat on Instagram and asked our premium subscribers what questions they have about the behind the scenes of our business, Cubicle to CEO, and my founder life. And these are the questions that we've compiled from that chat. So we'll be answering those today. And of course, if you want to hear the full Q&A, make sure you join us as a premium subscriber for only $17 a month. The link will be below in the show notes. But anyway, Sabrina, hello. I'm so glad you're home from Chicago.
I know. Hi. I'm so glad to be here. I love the studio, by the way. It's
Thank
so
you.
cute. I'm so happy to be in person. It's crazy that we've done like a few podcast episodes together,
Yep.
but none of them have been in person before.
Exactly. And it's fun because usually even when I'm recording virtually with a guest, I'm sitting, so just a little behind the scenes, usually I'm sitting at the desk. This mic is attached to a boom arm and, I'm recording and the chairs are behind me. So I rarely get to actually sit in these chairs. So that was
cozy.
Yeah,
They're cozy.
they are very cozy. And that was kind of the intention when we built my office originally. Like we wanted this to feel kind of like a studio environment. So very excited to test it out today.
Yay. I'm so happy to be here. Well, should we kick off the Q&A?
Yes, let's do it. Let's jump in.
Okay. Well, just starting off with the fact that this is a premium subscriber-led Q&A. The first question I wanted to ask is, what are a few things that you've loved about turning the podcast into a private podcast and making this premium content?
There's so many things I've really loved about this move. One of them is that I feel like it allows us to be a lot more intentional with the content. You can probably weigh in on this too from the production side, but once we moved into this model where we post like 15 to 20 minutes, it's usually like a little under a half of the episode for free on our public feed, and then the rest of it is behind a paywall for our premium subscribers. I feel like this year, we started to organize our case studies by a theme. So in the past, if you've listened to our show for a long time, then we switched over to a case study format. I think in like 2023 was when we switched over. So we'd been doing that for a couple years already, but they were always very sporadic. Like the case studies did not necessarily connect to each other week to week. And so this year we decided to test having actual grouped themes of case studies. So we've gone through quite a few now. For example, at the beginning of the year, we launched with the most interesting and creative ways that people are marketing or selling an offer, service, or product in 2026. And then currently we're wrapping up a series. This is actually my favorite series we've ever created. It's How My Money Makes Me Money. It's basically how people are taking the profits from their business and actually investing it into various different vehicles. We covered like real estate, stock markets, business acquisitions, private money lending. I think there was another one. There's a fifth one, right?
Angel investing.
Yes. Okay.
The first one.
Yeah. Yes, angel investing. And so anyways, that's been really rewarding just to get to be very intentional with the content and book guests based on different topics that our premium subscribers request and want to listen to. So we're recording this in the middle of July. We've already planned out series all the way through, I think, mid-September. And so we have our next two series mapped out actually at this point in time. So intentionality of content is one. Of course, just the fact that the production of this podcast has become more financially sustainable. And what I mean by that is if you didn't listen to our episode back in the beginning of the year where we explained why we were shifting into this private or premium podcast model, we talked about that a little bit more at length, but essentially we wanted to make it so that the cost of producing this podcast, and there's a real cost involved every single week, every single month, right? Both in terms of staff and labor, there's like 3 people total who work on the podcast. So being able to utilize the subscription revenue from our premium subscribers to cover our production costs has helped make this show more sustainable, I think, for the long term. So that's another thing I love about it. And then the third thing I love about having the premium model now is our group chat with our subscribers. It's so much fun to pop in there, and it just allows more opportunities for conversation to happen before and after episodes air, because podcasting typically is very much like a solo kind of activity, whether you're recording or whether you're listening. Typically, you don't get a lot of feedback from your listeners unless they are taking the initiative to like pop into your DMs and share a thought. But usually people are listening on their own and then they're kind of like processing what they hear on their own. And with the group chat that our subscribers are part of now, there's this channel where they can ask follow-up questions, where we can have more dialogue, where people can actually share how they're implementing takeaways from the case studies. And also sometimes just talk about, things unrelated to the podcast too. I just think it's a really great place for the people that I want to spend time with to really have that think tank, right? That place for us to have conversations and share, what's happening in real time in our businesses. So those are my three. Do you have anything you want to add there?
Yeah, I actually have a couple of things. I remember when we first talked about like this premium model and taking our case studies behind the paywall, because we had the C-suite before where we had the private podcast going. When we were taking our bread and butter, if you will, and putting it into a premium format, I was down, but I was like, I'm a little curious about how it'll go when finding like guests that want to come on, because so many people find us because of the case studies. And I was like, are we going to get the same caliber of guests? But like you said, I feel like our case studies have only gotten better and the pitches haven't stopped coming. And I feel like they're more intentional. And because it's premium, people are more willing to like dive into those numbers and stuff like that. So I think that was a really fun surprise for me. I know I didn't really question it. I was just more like, well, how is this going to go? And how quickly is it going to feel like that change has happened? Because I do feel like the case studies this year have just been like some of the best that we've put out in general. So
100%.
I'm loving all of that. And then as far as the private chat goes, I also love that we're hosting that in Instagram, because same when we did the C-suite, we had another like channel through Kajabi where we would facilitate conversation. But I think it being on Instagram makes it so much more accessible for people because they're already scrolling and then they see they got a DM from us and they're inclined to join the conversation instead of going to an entirely different platform. So I think that ease of conversation starting and all of that kind of stuff really is such a fun element of the private podcast now. And also because of those conversations, like for the How My Money Makes Me Money series, we didn't know that Yasha was in private lending, but because she's a premium subscriber and she was talking about that, we're like, actually, that's a perfect fit for this. And we wouldn't have known if she hadn't been jumping into those conversations in the chat. So
that's such a great point. And actually now we've tapped quite a few, I would say, premium subscribers for different case studies. So it's like a visibility channel too. I mean, that's not what it's designed for primarily, but like just naturally being in closer community with our listeners, we start to discover more about their businesses. And it makes it easier for us to then reach out and be like, ooh, there's actually a series that we're recording that we think you'd be a great fit for. Do you want to submit a case study for this? And so that's happened quite a few times. And I love featuring our premium subscribers on our podcast when they have a right fit case study. So yeah, for all those reasons, we love our decision to do that. And we're going to continue with this model for the foreseeable future.
And kind of going back to a conversation that we were having with the acquisition of Runway and how your mindset is about being a well-rounded entrepreneur and like having your fingers in a bunch of different pies. Some of the questions from the subscribers have been what are your business and then your life non-negotiables? Because obviously you like to dabble in a bunch of different business things, but how do you prioritize having a life outside of business in tandem with all of the business activities that you've got going on?
So I feel like I've actually gotten a lot better about having a life outside of business in the last few years. And
I have to agree.
I just think that I'm in my side quest era, but let's be real. If you have known me for, years or even decades, I have always been the queen of side quests. Like I've always done very random things, but I think I'm leaning into it even more as an adult. And so, a couple years ago, as many of you know, I competed in a pageant. I won Mrs. Oregon and then went on to compete at Mrs. America in 2024. Thank you. And, that experience kind of launched me into this whole new community that I had never been a part of. I've met so many wonderful women through the pageant community. And now there's so many things that I get to be involved in, even, long after my title has ended, my year-long reign, if you will. But I still stay really involved. Like just this past weekend, I was supporting a local pageant, the Oregon Rose pageant, and went to go support some of the people behind the scenes there, and then some people I knew that were competing every year. There's like annually at our state pageant, all of us legacy queens get together, and it's like this whole weekend. I've been asked to judge for different competitions. It's just this whole other, hobby or like world that I've become part of, and that's really exciting. But there's also so many other things that I've either discovered or rediscovered my love for. And so just getting more involved in like the music and art scene, thinking back to things that brought me joy when I was younger. I keep talking about this, so I just need to bite the bullet on it, but I feel like I keep saying, I really want to find like a pottery class. And
I've been saying the same thing.
Really?
Yes,
Okay.
Literally.
Yeah, like I just have like this distinct memory. I was actually so bad at pottery, like no lie. That was a class I actually really struggled with, but it was so therapeutic, right? I really enjoyed it. And so like just rediscovering hobbies as an adult that I enjoyed as a child or as a teenager. That's something that I want to get into. I really, really in the next like 2 years want to find a musical to audition for, because I was totally a theater kid in like elementary and middle school. And then I kind of just stopped doing theater, but I never stopped music, right? Like I played piano and actually taught piano. So I was like a classically trained pianist from like age 5 through 18. And then I taught for a few years as well. And then I was in choir and, in dance, like I was on dance team in high school and college. And so I think the performing arts is a huge part of my life that I just want to bring back more front and center. So things like that. And then I've gotten really into reading again lately. I think for years I like read only nonfiction, right? And like in the last year and a half, I've really just like restarted my love for fiction. I've just been reading through all sorts of things, both published works and fanfics. And so it's like, it's been so much fun. I think those are sort of the non-negotiables in my life now, just making sure that I'm really expanding my world outside of what's happening on my computer or in this little bubble. And I think even like owning a store now, owning a retail store and being more plugged in to my community through the boards that I serve on, right? Like I joined my university's alumni board about almost a year ago now. And so just getting involved in more diverse organizations and activities has really, I think, made such a huge difference, both in my own personal fulfillment, but also how I'm able to show up better in business. So that's kind of like a very wide answer, I think, to that question. But I'm going to pause there before I get into like non-negotiables on the business side, if you have anything you want to add.
Yeah, it's funny. I have gotten really into reading in the last couple of years as well. And I really think it's because I started working for you.
Really?
Because when I started with my internship, like that was at the end of college for me. And I remember after I graduated, I think we were doing our first hire and we were talking about interview questions. And you're just like, one of the interview questions I want to ask is like, what's the last book you read? And I'm like, oh God, I would not be hired.
My textbook.
Literally. And so I started with nonfiction too, but I'm deep in the fiction trend. Low key, the premium subscribers, let's get a book recommendation list going in the group chat, because that would be really fun. I'm big into my fantasy era at the moment, but I'm open to any and all recommendations as well. Anything that anyone that is like obsessed with, I really want to hear about. And then going into the non-negotiables piece of it, I remember in an episode a few years ago, I can't remember if it was like an income report at the top of the year or something like that, but you were talking about like boundaries that you wanted to set as far as like when people are presenting you with opportunities and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. I'm curious where your mind is at with that now, because especially now, like we said, you have like your fingers in a bunch of different pies. How do you decide which opportunities you want to say yes to, which ones you're like, actually, this is a life era for me, kind of.
Yeah.
How do you distinguish?
I am going to refer anyone listening to this episode to re-listen or listen for the first time to an episode I recorded. I think it was only like 1 or 2 months ago, where I actually talked about like, here are some of the time-saving boundaries that I have implemented in my business over the last few years, because I really break down in detail some very tactical things that I've done there. So I won't repeat myself here on those things, but I will just say in general, something really does have to feel exciting to me these days to do it. I very rarely will, take on something that isn't actually lighting me up in some way. I think some of this has to do with, and maybe this is like a different perspective I can share. I think some of this has to do with To hear the rest of this episode and unlock weekly subscriber-only content and community access, join us as a premium subscriber at cubicletoceo.co/podcast. The link is below in our show notes.